last session, the last panel discussion. Okay, welcome back. The last panel discussion for the day is no tolerance to non-compliance in the digital era. We have the panelists, Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, Mr. Brijesh Singh, Ms. Purnima Sampath, Mr. J.N. Gupta, and our moderator will be J.D. A brief introduction. Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti is a fellow chartered accountant and chairman of DH Consultants Private Limited. As managing partner of Haribhakti and Company, Mr. Shailesh is deeply involved in auditing, risk advisory services, and tax services. He serves on the board of over 10 Indian companies and chairs 10 audit committees. Further, Mr. Haribhakti is also involved in SME ecosystem transformation and mentor capital provision. He strongly believes in the virtue of corporate social responsibility, governance, and promoter of a greener environment. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Mr. Brijesh Singh will be joining us. He is stuck in traffic, and he'll join us as soon as he gets in, but I'm taking the liberty of introducing him. Mr. Brijesh Singh is former IG of Criminal Investigation Department and is currently Maharashtra Police's Cyber Security Head and official CISO of the department, designated Special Inspector General for Women Atrocity Prevention and Cybercrime, a special authority created by the Maharashtra government to tackle cyber threats. Mr. Singh is extremely passionate about photography, philosophy, and classical music. Besides being creative, Mr. Brijesh holds degrees in various diverse fields like engineering, business management, psychology, public administration, foreign trade, computer forensics, and law. I think that's an interesting combination. We have with us Mr. J.N. Gupta. He is the founder and managing director of Stakeholder Empowerment Services. He is responsible for firm's strategy, team, and operations. He has over 40 years of diversified experience in public and private sector, including 2 terms with Securities and Market Regulator, SEBI. He was a member secretary of the committee headed by Dr. Bimal Jalan, former governor, RBI, to review market infrastructure institutions. He was also SEBI's nominee on IOSCO Standing Committee, member of the Steering Committee. Mr. Gupta is a BTech Electrical Engineering from IIT Kanpur and a certified financial analyst. Ms. Purnima Sampath is the Vice President Legal at Tata Sons. She is a corporate lawyer with 15 years of experience in legal operations, corporate governance, internal controls, and risk management. She has been an expert on the subject matters like private equity and restructuring matters. Ms. Sampath also advised on the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy while at Veal, Gochal and Manjis LLP in New York. She received a BA LLB from the National Law School of India and has completed LLM from the Columbia University of Law. And the moderator will be Mr. Jaideep Kevalramani. He is the CEO of Legacy Services and comes with over 21 years of industry experience in technology, digital, and outsourcing domain. He's an executive program graduate of Stanford University and has worked for large global brands like Thomson Reuters. Jaideep repatriated to India in 2012. He'll moderate the panel. It is 5:40, so 6:40 latest because we need to set up the place. And no tolerance to non-compliance.
Thank you very much. So we'll be conscious of the time, and we'll welcome Mr. Singh the minute he is in. But thank you for joining us. We've got a very distinguished panel here. We've got someone from the regulation side, we've got someone from the corporate side, and someone who's on several boards. We are missing the enforcement angle, so the minute Mr. Singh is here, we'll have every aspect covered. Just to kind of open up the discussion, digital has 2 flavors for all of us here in the room today. One is that businesses have gone digital. What that means is channels are going digital, your sales are going digital, processes are going digital. In fact, we were talking about this earlier today. All of you must have picked up the Times of India this morning, and half the paper was full of Flipkart, Amazon, and Snapdeal, and they are all digital sales. I mean, there is no brick and mortar in this, but that's one example of how digital is kind of entering into all of our lives. The topic for today is, of course, digital in the corporate world. The second aspect of digital is how is digital impacting compliance? So it's a double kind of conversation that we will have today. What I'd like to do is request the panel to talk about, from each of your perspectives, what has been the impact of digital per se, and then we will flow into some other topics. You want to go first, Purnima?
So I work for the group legal team at Tata Sons, and thanks to our new leader, we have a new digital transformation office, and I think that's really cool.
Should we turn this one off?
Hi, is this on? Yeah. Thanks, Jaideep. Jaideep's question was, how does digital really impact the group legal team, or I would say 250 lawyers across the Tata Group? Few quick responses. The way we look at legal operations has dramatically changed. People now want to see something that's measurable. They want data analytics. They want budgets to be driven by, e-spending softwares. So I'd say the key areas that we'd be looking at to digitize, one is compliance management, not just at Tata Sons, but across many of our companies that have plants and factories. Two is litigation management. So all documents are in one place. It's easy to look at the entire portfolio and strategize. Three, we're looking at e-billing and e-spending. Can we get law firms to adhere to certain billing norms? And at the back end, connected with our SAP payments and payroll, so everything is paperless. We are looking to see if cross-functional alignments, legal's interaction with the ethics team, tax team, finance team, HR team, can that be on a portal so it's very clear who owns what and who drives what? What else? Intellectual property is another key area. You see, Tata Sons owns the Tata brand. It is licensed to every other Tata company. So I think what I see in the market are repositories of IP that is owned, but that's not my core interest. My core interest is, can I get an auto notice if the Tata trademark is infringed anywhere? Can I have an auto response? Dear X, we have noticed an infringement in this part of the world. You are hereby served with due notice. The language is standard. I wouldn't want to waste time and money drafting it. So we're actually working on processes to automate that. So in short, these are the different fields I would say I'd like to work on for the next 18 months or so across the group.
Well, Purnima, I'll pick up on the word that you used in your statement, portal. And I think that is the way that many large Indian companies are going. Big data. I just wrote somewhere recently that big data is becoming humongous in India. In fact, India is becoming the big data capital of the world, particularly after we have implemented UPI. And we are starting to see all of these payments moving between individuals. But in the compliance area, there is at least 1.5 changes, significant changes, only in Companies Act happening every week by way of notification, by way of whatever else. And so there is a humongous amount of change management that companies such as Legatrix have to deal with. So I was asking, how does all of this get updated on 800 different portals, if you like, 800 different sites where this software is active or where any other software or portal is active is the big challenge. There is also the big enablement because there is an openness on the part of courts, for example, to permit litigation data to be captured. So today, there's a company that I work with which is crawling the web and getting information right down from every district court, 1.5 lakh district courts and upward, on all pending litigation. It's bringing it down to the reality of every company. So at least you, if you're doing a diligence on somebody, you'll be in a position to know that there is a legal situation which exists in some court. Same I can say is the openness in terms of MCA data, which may have varying levels of cleanliness, but there is artificial intelligence, machine learning kind of software which is available, which can help clean this data so it becomes usable in the context of permitting compliance to happen. The other thing I'm noticing is that most people do not wish to actually do data entry to enable their compliance systems to work. The automation has to happen in a way that you are not constrained by the fact that you have not updated data. It has to happen in a manner that there is an automated flow into your system which enables your processes to have that uptick and get compliant as soon as a new requirement is specified. So with this kind of challenging environment and the enablement happening because government has realized this, we have cloud computing today which permits us to house and process very large quantum of data. I'm seeing a completely new world emerging. Last 4 years, whatever we knew 5 years ago has to be unlearned. And we need to relearn to make sure that we are in line with what is required today. So it's a great world, and it's a fantastic atmosphere in which this kind of seminar and this kind of panel is being held.
Thank you. First, let us welcome our guest. Good evening. The topic is no tolerance or zero tolerance to compliance in digital era. My first problem is with the topic itself. Do we mean to say that we were very tolerant and we should have been tolerant when there was no digital era as far as the compliance is concerned? Now, I go back to the 2 sessions prior when we were discussing about sexual harassment, and where Ms. Ritu Jain made a point that it should have been the culture. If you right from the childhood inculcate a culture that sexual harassment is bad, probably sexual harassment at the adult level would not happen. So similarly, I would say that if the culture of compliance would have come to us from the days when we were taught moral science, probably we would not be discussing whether there is a need for change or tolerance in digital era or non-digital era. But I would say, as others have said, the challenges, the importance of big data and all other things. I would say now the situation is that today the data has brought a situation where you can see every part of your body in a monitor or in a digital monitor, and whatever you eat, whatever you speak, whatever you think gets translated into that monitor. And that monitor is not available only to you, it is available to the regulator as well. Now that challenges come when nothing is hidden. But then as we know in India or everywhere else, the issue is everybody talks about the cost of compliance, but nobody thinks of benefits of compliance. Everybody says that there is a risk in the business, blah, blah, blah. But the moment you understand the compliance is the tool which will reduce your risks, and that is going to ultimately benefit you. So I would say that there is a mindset change required. The other thing, being a regulator myself, I know that what happens, there would be a lot of investment going on into the companies, how to avoid detection from the regulator. That means how long I can fly below the radar detection level so that I will continue with the non-compliance and do. But I think with the big data, as everybody says, and I would say I have seen impact of technology. In last 4 years, earlier the general meetings used to happen with a show of hands. But ever since the electronic voting has come, it has been a game changer as far as governance or compliance is concerned. So I would say that as the discussion progresses, we would discover many, many new things that is going to happen with the big data.
Is this mic working? Yeah, it is. Mr. Singh, pleasure to have you on the panel. We were waiting for you, so I'm glad that you could join us. While we were waiting for you, the opening conversation has been what's been the impact of digital in the context of corporate India. So if you can share your views, then we'll move on to the next question.
So, both in governance and in the context of corporate India, digital has changed scales. So, and also the scales of everything, right from cost to effort. So, whatever could require, let's say, a lot of effort and a lot of money can now be done with very small money and very small effort. But having said so, take any example. Let us say if we talk of the so-called India stack, which is used to give services like public distribution system and scholarships and direct beneficiary transfer. So there have been savings of scale. It's said that by certain estimates, the money saved due to Aadhaar in last 1 year has been 62,000 crores. So the scales are immense. But this also brings the responsibility of, like Supreme Court was very categorical when it said that what it can be used for and what it cannot be. So the responsibility of government and corporates as data fiduciary, because the new data protection regulation is going to be very onerous, and we are simply taking provisions which are very similar to GDPR. Now, as sir was talking about, compliances, nobody would talk of compliances because the punishments are so severe that you will have to go for compliances. It's up to, I think, 4% of your total turnover in GDPR, and similarly in India's data protection regulation also. So, cost of any breach has been made so costly that compliance is not anymore an option. You will have to comply, or non-compliance will become an existential risk. Apart from the breach being an existential risk, non-compliance as a regulatory risk will become so severe, and the bill has been submitted, it's about to become a law. So I don't think so there is any option left. We will, if we have to, as a country, if we are taking these technologies, then we will have to come up with standards which are akin to West or probably better. Now the problem is that there is an issue with our culture, that since these technologies were not indigenously evolved, we sort of didn't build in a culture of compliance in our practices. But having said so, I don't think so that we are left with any options but to comply. We will have to also bring down the cost of compliance. Today, any kind of compliance, if you look at, even for cyber security, the costs are very high, which is a deterrent. And if we bring these costs down, I think then people would naturally be compliant, and it would ensure sort of, especially in the field of cybersecurity, it would ensure that we are building up a robust system.
Right. No, thank you very much. I think that hooks back to our opening this thing, no tolerance to non-compliance. I think that's two negatives in a statement that kind of pushes for more and more compliance. I have another question before we talk about other points, and maybe this is for you, Purnima, and Mr. Haribhakti. There has been a big explosion of data. One could look at it in a positive way and say there is big data and therefore tools and analytics and so on, but it has also led to info obesity. Info obesity. I mean, there's a lot of information. How do organizations cut through so much of information, so much of data? So the question is, how should the business manage data? Your thoughts on that?
Okay, I think that's a $1 million question. If I had to create a report on what are the top 3 risks facing, say, a holding company like ours, or say many other Indian companies, I would say it's data, breach of data, and for some reason I feel it's probably not gotten the level of attention it should receive in terms of, you know, board attention, budget, cyber insurance, and all of that. I work for a company that's about 150 years old, and we have so much data, physical data all over. I felt the first step was digitize old legacy documents, and the other step we felt was make them text searchable. So you mentioned AI. So one component of AI is natural learning processes, or what they call OCR. I think is optical cognitive recognition. So make every document searchable. We've taken a license, I'm working on a license for a tool called Relativity, or we develop the product in-house to make sure everything is searchable and documents are automatically sorted and classified. So today in India, I find that I actually have to do it manually, and it's probably cheaper to do it manually. But I'm hoping over a period, over the next 12 to 18 months, people create a product. So when they see the word senior counsel opinion, it should know automatically when it sees it while scanning which folder it should go under. So going forward, if I'm ever served with an e-discovery notice, so NTT Docomo would have been a classic case where the company in India was served with an e-discovery notice. You can't tell a foreign company, a joint venture partner, go to my warehouse in Thane and search for it. You just cannot. And my response would be better litigation preparedness, better data preparedness, and take licenses for excellent search engines internally that will automatically store and sort.
In order that, I fully endorse everything that Purnima said, but I'd just like to take the other part of it. There is today a grave need to actually discard, because of data obesity, a lot of the data which is dysfunctional, not usable. And it becomes important to apply, again, AI to that aspect as to what is the data that I already have which requires to be junked and thrown out of my system. Secondly, the biggest problem in large emerging databases like ROC, like police records, for example, MCA websites, court, we have not templatized the way in which every field should be filled up. We've also not sensitized people to the fact that SRI and SHRI are not interchangeable expressions. You know, and what this does is it creates such a lot of bad data. And when it is picked up, then you got to analyze it, you got to scan it, you need to make sure that it's not talking about two different things. You need to find out that it is talking about the same thing. All of this creates the large overhead that we are today paying. So there is huge room for all of this to improve. There's a very large thing happening in India as well, which we need to take note of. Many legislations are actually being discarded. Now, if you do not revamp compliance systems to make sure that those discarded legislations are not still sort of in your system, you would be unnecessarily doing a whole lot of overhead processing which is avoidable. So all of these corrections need to be made. Templatization, harmonization, simplification, elimination, and actually making sure that you have only data which you truly need and which you need to work with.
True, thank you very much. I think definitely there is a lot of room for tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning to help automate and drop the costs. That if that is a concern, then we should use tools like that. Mr. Singh and Mr. Gupta, you touched upon GDPR and the provisions that we are kind of bringing in. There are some businesses in this room who deal with or are impacted by GDPR. So maybe if you can spend a few minutes talking about that. And then the underlying question on that, this is very interesting. So there are European companies who operate in India who are impacted by GDPR and are going to be impacted by the Indian Data Protection Act. What's going to be the future for them? So just a perspective as they brace for, or as they're preparing for GDPR and also preparing for the India DPR.
Well, come to your last question, I mean the earlier question first. See, the cost of storage has been reduced to a fraction now. So the question of data obesity is basically a question of data quality. Like as it was told that when we started, I implemented a large police sort of database system called CCTNS, Crime and Criminal Tracking and Network Systems. And when we digitized data worth 20 years of crime records, we found that a person's name could be written in 20 different ways. So, but you know, thankfully now there are very good algorithms for cleansing of data. And data quality, before you could, you know, as you were saying, templatize it, before you can put it to any use, data cleansing is essential. And that is really effort taking. So that is, the AI part may be automated, but this has to be done by a supervised human effort, and it is very essential because something like a crime database can lead to a question of life and death. So a relevant point there. Coming to your question of how GDPR is going to impact, something strange I'll mention in the context of GDPR. GDPR is talking of, the Indian Data Protection Law is talking of localization of data in India. Now there's a huge lobby of companies, foreign corporates, which are saying that, oh, you cannot localize data because one, that you cannot protect your data, you will have breaches and your cybersecurity practices are not good. So why localize? And I'm seeing this, that our Indian people, I had gone to some summit in Delhi where somebody said it on the stage that since we do not have good cybersecurity practices, what happens to my data? You know, it's only a foreign company which can protect it because they are gods. You know? It's very strange when we sort of hook, line and sinker fall prey to such kind of propaganda efforts. These same companies, when GDPR came, were bending over double to comply with GDPR. And they are holding seminars saying, are you GDPR compliant? And I get now these ad things also where, you know, people are conducting GDPR classes. So, so while it will sort of increase costs, let the costs increase, because data sovereignty and the sovereignty of the country are important questions. Though we should not go the China model, but look at China. At one stage, around 2010 or something, it kicked off Google, Facebook, Twitter, everybody, and they created their own companies. Look at Baidu, is a multi-billion-dollar company today. Baidu, Tencent, QQ, Renren, WeChat, they had their own products. We should also understand that all of these companies are somewhere related to some kind of an intelligence effort. And they have created your data, and privacy is dead because data has already been taken. They know almost everything about you. So now saying that only we can do data mining and we will not allow the Indian state to do data mining for any purposes where we are ready to have checks and balances. 2 days back, Justice Sri Krishna had come to we run an organization called Maharashtra Cyber. We had called him to talk about, you know, the law enforcement perspective in data protection. And he came up with a very valid point that you have audit trails and you justify. And you do not go beyond the purpose of what the data was collected for. And fair enough, with these stipulations, data can be put to use. See, law enforcement has been using data, and it uses data to enforce the rights of the victim. Yeah. So if, let us say, a telephone record is being checked or a number plate of a vehicle is being checked, it is to find out the perpetrator and see that the rights of the victim are protected. Now there is also a large movement against propaganda movement against Aadhaar by saying that this is surveillance. Something which is not a database, how can it become surveillance? Yeah. So we should be, in this context of data protection, we should be very careful that while our companies are very happy with GDPR, our own companies and foreign companies are not happy with our data protection regulations, neither with data localization. In the long term, it would help us to be a digitally sovereign nation. It would help us to localize data. It would help us to have our own products. We have so much of intellectual capital and potential, but none of the products is ours. None of the large, if you look at the few valley companies which are controlling the world today, literally the world is being controlled by few of the valley companies. None of them is Indian. But if you really go to valley, you find that half of the ecosystem is from California. Half of the ecosystem is being run by Indians. Now, a very anomalous situation where we should now take up, our leadership. We should come to center stage. We should take up the leadership in this space. We should come up with our own products, and then we should responsibly handle data. And once we do that, I think we'll create value for people, value for the country, and value for the world.
Before I pass it to Mr. Singh, I want to take this as a 10-second sales opportunity. We are not Silicon Valley based. Legacy is 100% homegrown Indian. All right, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Singh.
Mr. Singh has already covered a lot, but I will say it is more of a business risk that people say, but everybody wants to protect his business. So how do you protect your business in California and USA? You say that you are incompetent. Now, other thing is this, that people say that there has been leakage there and you are not capable. I say that there accidents happen on the road. Do you stop building roads or you stop building cars? You make systems and procedures so that you can do. So I would say going forward, somewhere in between China model and US model will prevail. India will come up with something. And of course, the data protection is required, and as Mr. Singh rightly said, that you use the data only for the purpose for which it has been created. Now, coming back to another thing, the first question which Mr. Singh also answered, I would say that data access. Now, the issue is that we as an Indian or we as a regulatory organization have habit of collecting data which I am not going to use in my lifeline. MCA collects data which I can challenge, nobody ever looks after it is filed. Now, what is the use of the data? And being a regulator, I say that whenever we used to do investigation, the person will give you, if you want a data which should be in 10 page, he will give you 1000 page so that you can sift through that and you will never come to a conclusion. So that has to stop. The data has to be categorized in a thing that what is really going to be used. ABC categorization has to happen. Otherwise, what will happen? You may create all big data and something, but ultimately it will be of no use.
Right. No, thank you very much. I mean, utility of data in the digital era has to be there. Otherwise, we are just building more and more storage and doing nothing out of it. No, thank you. So before we open it up for the audiences, here's a very provocative question. And I deliberated hard about how should we word this, but because we are an intimate audience and we've had a great afternoon, I'm going to give it a go. In the digital era, because all the data that's flowing in, that's easy, systems are talking to each other, Managing compliances on digital platforms has become easy. Reporting that data has become easy, and the government and the regulators are able to mine through that data also very easily. Therefore, the provocative question is, has evasion become difficult? I'd love to have all of your views before we open it to the audience. Mr. Hari Bhakti.
I mean, as I'm a practitioner in the field, I can tell you that the incentive to evade is zero today. There is no place to hide, as Mr. Gupta mentioned. The transparency that the system has created. Let us take one example. The reason why our tax collections are at least twice the rate of GDP growth, at least, and you can check statistics for the last 10 years, is largely because we installed a tax information network. So my income has to be reflected as your expense, and your expense has to be reflected as somebody else's income. That basic thought, and look at what happened as a result of GST. It was estimated that the total registrations will not rise above the number of companies which had a proper address and which was recognized. The actual registration has been 6 times that number, because everybody wants to actually enter the system and wants to be self-policed, because that's the only way that you can create legitimate wealth in this country. There is no place to hide. The 5R reforms which I identify, UPI, GST, the RERA, the Benami, all of these have made no place to hide. The cost of evasion is too high. Nobody will want to evade.
You know, as you said that there's no place to hide, it would become very difficult for anybody to be sort of evading or non-compliant. So there is a standard which is called XBRL, right? Now, what XBRL does is that I think RBI has made it compulsory now, at least for banks, to, when they submit data to RBI, it should be in XBRL. So what XBRL does is like this, that if you, let's say, had an Excel sheet wherein every column, every row was self-aware, in the sense that, let us say I am his employee and I submit a bill to him that I went to Pune and my taxi bill was 2 lakh, right? Now that Excel sheet will instantly, because everything has been codified in a way that it has sort of the metrics of every possible transaction, it would immediately flag it. Now with XBRL, the Reserve Bank could find out that money flows which could not be discovered in a long time were instantly available. And I think the first time they applied it, they found that discrepancies of 30,000 crores, 40,000 crores were easily evident. Similarly, crunching large amount of data has become possible today with great ease. It doesn't require a structured database approach. Earlier, when you had a structured database, querying was very limited. Now today you have engines like Elasticsearch. Now Elasticsearch is like a magical thing, that you put structured data, unstructured data, anything, and then you can simply ask it to relate any entity across that data. And this can be done in real time. So let us say if you put probably 2 lakh documents into Elasticsearch, it can in real time index them, and you can find one entity and find out the relationship of all this entity instantly. Now see, this has given immense power. Today somebody was discussing with me about financial intelligence unit, FIU and all. And these people are using these systems which are based on Elasticsearch, which are based on big data systems, which are based on this real-time processing of data. So anybody thinking that he would be able to fudge figures or something like that, I don't think so. Especially with GST, where the chain is so complete that somebody has to pay. If you are in the formal system, you will have to pay. And nobody is going to take the risk of taking from somebody who is not a registered person. So this I think is going to give rise to an honest, transparent system where the overall burden of taxation on people will come down, and the tax net would increase, and we are seeing that already, that the number of taxpayers and registrations is already increasing in the country, and which looks like a good steps toward a formal, honest and digital economy.
Purnima, your views?
I think Mr. Singh and Sailesh have actually covered an entire range of illustrations and examples. So let me just, I won't add to it, but I'll just take the thread in a different line. Yes, evasion is more difficult in a digitized world. But I feel what we have achieved in India in the last, whatever, 5 years has been stupendous. But at some level, it's foundational level. Yeah? So you still have traders manipulating the markets today, even though you have great systems at the BSE and NSE. You still had an era of Modi scam involving a significant amount of money in spite of worldwide SWIFT systems. So I feel the next step is not, so digitization is taking care of, identity issues, things are traceable, there's accountability, some transparency. But we need it to be a lot more sophisticated. Like if somebody were to study what are the top 10 risks for India as a country, and let's say theoretically hypothetically somebody finds out it's trading, right? Can we then create certain digitized systems for the markets to fix that particular risk? As a country, can we focus on top 10 material risks and address those? So I think that would make evasion genuinely difficult, and it would also move many companies and corporates from paper programs, check the box, to actually thinking about what are you move from foundation level to, I would say, a more advanced to a more mature level, where you address top 5 risks. It could be legal operations, it could be strategy, it could be internal financial control, could be anything really. But a lot more thought now needs to go in a more refined way so that the benefits are palpable in the corporate world and to India as a country.
Right, thank you. Mr. Gupta, your views before we open it up to the audience.
So I would agree with all three that it is becoming very, very difficult to evade, but it is not impossible. We have very clearly seen at the time of demonetization the ingenuity of Indian people, that everything came back when people were saying that cash will not come. So we have to be very careful about the ingenuity. But the only thing is the advantage of, or rather cost of trying to evade and the likely punishment. But every system is as good as the people manning the system. And that is where the problem comes of integrity of everybody in the entire chain. And I would give a very simple example. Suppose my son has said that, Papa, you should walk 5 kilometers every day, and I will watch your iPhone. I have an option of giving iPhone to my driver and go and walk for 5 kilometers. So that type of system can happen. So we have to be very clear, because somebody said that more time or more money and time the Indian entrepreneurs spend on trying to dodge the law rather than following the law. And if they follow the law, they would be better off. The day it comes to our mind that following the law is a better option, probably will be a very happy person.
Right, thank you. And with that, we'll open this up to the audience. We have about 20 minutes, so that gives us room for about 4 or 5 questions. When you ask a question, please announce your name, your company, and then also if you could tell us which panelist you want to ask the question to, that will be great. Can we have the mics around the floor, please? I see a hand at the far end over there.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, I am Prayank. I am from Legacy itself. I want to add to the last question, which you said that in the digital era is evasion possible. According to me, I believe that evasion is absolutely not possible with emergence of blockchain technology, which has not been discussed on the forum. So I wanted to bring in this point that with the application of blockchain technology in every facet of work, whatever be it cyber forensic, be it financial institutions, be it any litigation or litigation management platforms, or be it any court rulings, we can use this technology everywhere, which can help us do things in smarter way with less human effort and 100% transparency. One of the case we have is issuance of birth certificates in West Bengal using blockchain technology. So our country is actually adopting all these technologies in a very good and a broader way. And also to the question that most of the companies in India are actually from Valley originated, not from India per se, except couple of tech giants. So another, my perspective or my knowledge or my insights on that is, in US or maybe in other countries, for example, Israel, innovation is driven by military forces or the defense forces, which is not something very common in Indian state. So, sir, if you can add something to that, that will be wonderful.
Who is to answer that?
Yeah, it's towards you. Like.
Okay, one that, see, too much of hope has been created around blockchain. Blockchain is good for non-repudiation, but it is also, computationally intensive. So what happens is that as the size of the blockchain increases, you are unnecessarily doing calculations which are not, just to maintain that blockchain. It's not a very elegant solution. For non-repudiation, it's good. But then when you build platforms on that like Ethereum and all, you can do transactions. Ultimately, transactions are about what values you feed in them, right? Now, it would ensure the integrity of the data, but what about the data which has been input? If the data itself that was input is with intent to commit a fraud, then probably blockchain can do nothing about it. It can only, let's say, find out and say that it can only be an issue of non-repudiation, in the sense that the integrity of data will be maintained across all times and you won't be able to fudge it. But that can be done by other systems also. So while blockchain has its uses, it's not one medicine for everything. Now, while you were talking of the innovation ecosystem, I think yes, if you look at, there's a very good book which you should read. It's called Troublemakers. It's about how the innovation ecosystem started in the Silicon Valley. And it's with these defense projects like DARPA, wherein they started, giving these projects out to people. See, somewhere, I'm a government servant, I should not be saying this, but somewhere we have no scope for innovation due to our purchase methodology. Our purchase methodology, howsoever we say, howsoever we talk about things, bureaucracy is risk averse. And the startup ecosystem is about risk, right? And we cannot expect the risk averse government purchase system to indulge into something which basically is very, very risky. While startups appear to be the buzzword, the success rate of startups is very, very less, right? It's around 2 to 4%. So when you are using public money, you cannot put to something which has a 96% chance of failure. Nobody would allow it. The accountant is going to roast us live for the next 10 years. But time is I think, ripe, where we have excellent engineers. We have people who now have the mindset of wanting to work in a startup ecosystem, but they need real data. This is where government can come in. They need real data, real problems to work on, because the quality of your solution would be entirely dependent upon, let us say if you are training a mathematical model, if you are training an AI model of supervised learning, it would entirely depend on the data set. Now most of the data sets are with government, and there also we do not have a culture of sharing this data, but we should have a method of, let's say, anonymizing it or tokenizing it, obfuscating it, and giving it for research purposes. Here I feel very bad that most of our institutions do not have a culture of startups, and I do not find that a lot of good patents are coming out of our educational institutions. You look at China, I think 80 to 90% of the patents in AI today are just from China. So we will have to have an outlook where we sort of create a place for these young professionals to play with data, for government to be some kind of, a first client, to amortize some money for that risk. The government should be ready to put some money for that risk. But let me also say that government of Maharashtra is now coming up in the next 15 or 20 days. You will hear that Maharashtra government is coming up with this incubators, and they are starting incubators for at least 8 to 10 streams, and they are giving a starting sum of 5 crores for each incubator. So it's a good experiment. Let us see how it succeeds. But rather than money, I think what is needed here is mentoring, is to tell them, how to manage their money, how to approach markets, how to sustain in the long term, how to refine their product. These are skills which would come from mentoring, not just from money. I see a lot of entrepreneurs in the US today are ready to come back and work for the country. We should tap that. We should have a policy for that. And I don't know how this is going to pan through. But if we do not do this in the next 2-3 years, we are going to miss the bus.
Right.
I'll just say two things. Since morning, I've been reading 2 articles. One is about a Chinese company embedding spy chips into large servers, and which have kind of populated defense organizations and critical applications at Amazon, AWS, and Apple, and all of them. And the other article I read was what's happening to the unraveling of Darktrace, which is arguably one of the most important cybersecurity companies in the world. They have been discredited in this morning's FT because of the fact that the alerts that they give are sometimes fictitious, just to cause a scare. So we need to temper all of this blockchain and all of this by the one big test of utility and sustainability over the whole value chain. That is critical.
Right. Thank you. I see a hand over here on the second table.
Hi, myself Rahul Nagori from Covestro India Private Limited, and my question is related to the GDPR. Okay, so there could be 2 sets of questions. One is,
can you speak a little louder?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. So as GDPR is already active in the European Union by 25th of May, and so I wanted to understand, suppose if there is an alleged data breach by an Indian company who is catering to a European Union, any of the companies, by individual or any such data. So what is the process will be taken, how it's going to get prosecuted? And with the likes of tech giants in India, we have, I'm sure, likes of TCS or Tech Mahindra or Infosys must be catering to this kind of European Union's companies. So how they are tackling this, and what is the risk they are seeing over here? If Ms. Sampath or any of the panel could answer this.
Let me make sure I understand your question first. You're saying an Indian company is processing data on behalf of a European company, and there is a data breach.
Yes.
And your question is, what are the risks or what are the actions to be taken?
Yes.
Okay, both. If it involves a data breach of sensitive personal data or personally identifiable information, then the Indian company is probably liable on behalf of the European company. I guess the question they ask is who's a data collector, who's a data processor. I'm assuming here that the Indian company is processing data on behalf of the European company, which is the data collector. Hence, there is some liability. Who prosecutes, we don't know, because there's yet, that's not started yet.
No, my question is, there's an Indian company like Infosys or Tata, TCS, and they must be having some software services to be given to the European Union companies itself, and that data, what they are working on, gets breached, and that has individual special SPDI data. So what will be the process you're going to take, like to mitigate the risk?
Oh, I believe they've all been very clever, and all of these companies you mentioned have made sure that they are only data processors and not data collectors.
Okay.
The GDPR imputes liability on the data collector. And they've all sort of gotten away saying we've got a lot of systems in place, a lot of processes in place, cyber security processes, IT security, all of that. Many of them have taken cyber security insurance as well. As a data processor, the liability is on the collector, which is the European company.
Just to add to this, if you allow
That's
me.
my view, and that's my understanding of what several of these companies have done.
Okay, if you just allow me to add one more question to this is, suppose, like I'm sure data processor is already safeguarded themselves, but from the data collector, there must be some indemnity as well, right? Because data collector will not be the last person who will be paying if there is any issues, right? So I'm sure data collector must have indemnified from the data processor itself, because if there is a leakage from the end of data processor, then there is an issue. So how are we going to tackle that?
It's a good question. That's a matter of contract, and that's a matter of leverage. It depends on the company you're dealing with. Would a company as large as a TCS want to give an indemnity? Well, if TCS and Infosys are pitching for the same business, and if Infosys is willing to give an indemnity, my sense is TCS may have to wake up and probably follow suit. So I don't think there's a crystal clear answer to that. If I were a data collector, I would definitely want and I would seek an indemnity. But even that said, in India, there have been very few indemnities that have actually been successfully enforced. So if I were the data collector, I would just factor it in as a risk, probably have like a reserve as well, set aside. Does that answer your question partially?
Yes. I have one more, can I?
May I request you to hold that, and maybe we could take it offline. We have room for probably 1 or 2 questions. Can I have, I think I saw a hand over here. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Varsha. I am from TaxSutra. My question is for ma'am. You did mention with regards to the data earlier that we are trying to make the data more searchable so that it is more effective for use, for whatever uses that have been identified. I wish to know from your experience and your interactions with other companies as well, what is the sort of investment these companies actually are willing to put in when it comes to developing these systems for information? What is the general attitude there?
So, just so I'm clear, your question is what sort of investments are companies willing to make to store data securely? Is that right?
Even to process and even analyze. Let's say there are a lot of companies who also analyze systems for you, and they have systems, which are to be sold. What is the level of willingness these companies have?
So in the BFSI sector, they deal with a lot of very sensitive data, and I find, I mean, it's my own, these views are personal and do not reflect that of the company I work with. Any company in the BFSI sector is very forward thinking. We met with several to understand what learnings we could take as a group from them, and I find that they've invested, their boards actually have a risk management committee. The risk management committee, if they're listed companies nowadays, have to present a cyber security proposal and take it on record. The BFSI sector has taken that very seriously, and I feel that their budgetary allocation, they have chief digital officers, chief information officers, data protection officers, they are way ahead of the curve. You're talking of other companies. Most of the companies I engage with in the Tata Group are not BFSI companies. I would say 80% are not BFSI companies, and at the holding company level, there's a lot of thought going into how much do we actually want to protect how much do we want to put in to protect our data? It's a tricky question. We've studied what's out there in the market. There are many tools available. I'll give you a few examples. We called 5 vendors and we asked them, what would it take for you to digitize all these documents and make them text searchable? You know, the quotations were 5 crores, 10 crores. And then I went down the road, literally, I think we'd gone down for a sandwich downstairs. I went down the road and I saw it says Easy Document Managed Solutions Private Limited. So I just walked in there and he said, I'll do it for you. It's 1 rupee per page for OCR, 50 paisa just for the Xerox. I'll send 5 guys to your office later to store the data. It was a no-brainer for me. I went ahead with my Indian solution. And now that I've done that, now that it's all searchable and indexed, I can now sort of have the company spend about 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, whatever it is, to get a license for a tool called Relativity and use that in-house for somebody we engage for about, I'd say, 5 to 6 lakhs per annum. So there are many solutions across the board. It depends on how much a company is willing to spend. And at that moment, I felt maybe 2 years later, I might do something a lot more sophisticated. For now, it serves my purpose.
Unfortunately, we have time for only one last question, and the lady behind you takes preference. So we can request you to take your question offline.
Hi, I'm Gopika Rathi from Sterlite Power Transmission, Delhi. So my question is that various companies have to provide their buyers and sellers information while filling their bill of lading to the customs authority. And the customs authority make the information public because various countries make it mandatory for them to do so. However, the third party, there are some companies who are taking the data from the customs website, collating it in a searchable format, which unfortunately provide the details of supplier, buyer, etc. to their competitors. So how can we save this data? What can be the remedy?
So the panel believes it's a very difficult question to answer. I'll probably put it up. You want to take that, Purnima? No?
I think we have not practiced it.
Sorry? Well, I mean, it's out there. I think it's something to do with the law and the process. Maybe that should be questioned, and the association of companies should demand for privacy of that data and kind of move in that direction. But Purnima, do you want to add anything?
What is the sensitive data here? The name of the buyer, name of the seller, or the product being sold? To me, the sensitive data is the price at which a product is being sold, perhaps, right?
So even if we are 2 competitors and my data is there that I'm supplying goods to XYZ company, all my suppliers are there and they are made in a searchable format. Now my competitor can just go and contact them and say that, okay, maybe I can give you a better price. So it is a data breach.
I think it's a very competitive world.
Maybe
no, but
you need
this
to change
is
your
illegal.
game.
That's for sure. But
Hello.
do we have anything? Yeah.
Your problem is very genuine, and this is a fact of life. That is why there is a need for data security, because if somebody is collecting data in the customs department for the analysis for the purpose of government statistical department or any other trade department, and if he or she leaks the data, or if somehow the systems are such that the data is leaked, then there is a need to curb that. But if data is required to be collected by the government, it will be collected. But yes, I agree with you, the price sensitive, what price I am selling to a person and what is the quantum I am selling. If you can tabulate all data, then probably a new competitor can be born for me tomorrow. I agree that is a risk.
Yes. So we are still waiting for some law to curb this. Is it like that?
Well, certainly. I mean, but that's a great question. Anita, do we have time for one more question? I don't want to disappoint the gentleman who had put his hand up. So why don't you ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Deep Alok Chaudhary, and I am from Tata Chemicals. My question is, as per one of the recent surveys, around only of the surveyed people, only 11% believe that their data which is there in the public forum is protected. And we recently came across this article which when Facebook declared that lots of data of individuals have got leaked out. My question is it lack of intent or is it lack of robustness of the technology because of which this is happening? The 89% of the surveyed people doesn't believe their data is protected. Where are we on this?
I think before the panelists answer, I think Mr. Singh said it, privacy is dead. What do you do with that?
I didn't get the question. So you're wanting to ask that it's.
So my question is very simple. Is it lack
where are
of?
you? I can see actually. Yeah.
I will just stand up for you. So my question is very simple. Is it that the belief that our data is not protected in the public forum? Is it coming out of because of lack of intent of the persons or the individuals or the institutions or the organization who are supposed to protect it? Or is it lack of technology which is not able to ensure protection to this data because of which it is so much available easily?
I think all of these companies have very, very robust cybersecurity practices, very robust, because their very existence depends on it. Now, why breaches are happening is because the cost of attack is disproportionately lower than the cost of defense. So, for example, and it's also there are things against which you do not have a defense. So there are some things which are called zero-day exploits. Zero-day exploits are the 0th day on which that software or that system is born, there is a flaw in it and nobody knows about that flaw, right? Now these 0 days are known to a select few and they can be purchased for a great price, right? But if I know that, let's say if you're running an Oracle server or if you're running CentOS or you're running any particular system, if I have a 0-day exploit, I literally own you, right? I literally own that system. I can do anything to it. Now I don't know of, these are called the unknown unknowns, and there is absolutely no defense against unknown unknowns. But this is one level of threat. Similarly, there are a lot of threats, right from insider threats to probably, let's say, misconfigured systems, default username, passwords. You've heard of something called Shodan? Shodan is a search engine. Please, when you get time, log in into Shodan. Shodan is a search engine of vulnerable systems. Now, with Shodan, you can actually find out, you want to find out, let's say, how many people's homes have cameras which you have put for security, which are on the net, and which are configured in a way in which they are available on the internet. So Shodan automatically finds that out, indexes them, puts them on a map. So you can actually, draw a circle around some place and say that, how many cameras are open, and you can peep into people's homes, right? So now where is the question of intent, because somebody who must have made the hardware or the firmware for that camera would have never imagined that there are these vulnerabilities which are exploitable to a search engine, right? A search engine, once it finds out vulnerabilities, it is, of that particular make and model, it is finding out all cameras and giving you the feeds. Similarly about, home routers, and nowadays everything is getting connected. I mean, right from your Fitbits to everything is getting connected. And the amount of data that is available to be exploited, it's like a treasure trove for the attacker. The attacker ecosystem has developed very well. The number of unique malware written every day is around 3 lakhs, right? The number of unique and new malware written every day is more than 3 lakh. Now, what kind of protection you would have against this? So, again, the question of very robust practices. Compliance is one way, wherein you can build some kind of robustness around your system. Advanced threat hunting, threat detection, sharing of threat intelligence. There are a lot of things which you can do. But I don't think so that anybody can be 100% safe from hacking. So it's a game. It's a game wherein If you are very important, you would be targeted. And it depends upon who your adversary is. Let's say if your adversary is some kind of a nation state or a nation state actor or what we call an APT group, an advanced persistent threat group, I doubt there is something which would save you.
So it's really a chor police ka khel, where somebody is always trying to discover 3 lakh malwares. And I can assure you one thing, that in all the audit committees I sit on, or the risk management committees I sit on, we are obsessed that the #1 risk that we need to protect ourselves against is cybersecurity. So a lot of effort, lot of investment, lot of process is being spent on it. But then if you have 3 lakh malwares being written every day uniquely, it's a tough fight.
I still wonder, when you get message on internet that 2 days later this virus is going to strike and here is the vaccine for that. So I don't know what is the connection between the two, who makes the virus and who makes the vaccine.
With that note, I'd like to call it a wrap, but one action for all of us is that please check that your house CCTV is not on Shodang. I think we've got several takeaways. Both digital and non-compliance is no longer an option. You have to pursue both of them. We've laid a great foundation, both at the corporate level, at the government level, but there's plenty of headroom. While we know that the cost is a big concern, the cost of evasion is extremely high. And that kind of creates an opportunity for automation and tools like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. But we are on our way to be a digitally sovereign nation. And this seems like a lot of activity across companies. Clearly, all of you are here as champions across the country. It seems like a festival of compliance. With that, thank you very much. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you very much. May I request JD to give a token of our appreciation. I know the session could have gone on and on, but we need to move out of this room because we need to make new seating arrangements. So you'll have to take your, sorry, I'm continuing with the announcement because we're running behind schedule. It takes around 40 minutes to get the seating in order. So take your bags and everything that you have with you. And in 40 minutes, we will be ready to start. So that makes it around 7:20 or 25. One positive note was that every panelist who had confirmed has come for each of the sessions. So I think that was wonderful. So you can give a nice, loud, big round of applause. Thank you. There is tea outside.